sometimes human, sometimes animal, all conceived with extraordinary imagination and a wealth of expressive detail.
Live more natural lives in their unnatural habitats.
Becoming aware of nature, of natural details, and so forth.
But whenever he can, he has to be ready to investigate the unexpected and unusual, because it may contribute to what he wants to know.
We're talking about the sorts of things that had an impact in as much as they came from one part of the world and journeyed to another and acted in the mode of impact, impulse, influence, and so on.
We want to hinder the man at the wheel, who hurls the lance of his spirit across the earth along the circle of its orbit.
I'd suggest that we should rather look for changing angles of vision.
An inventive tradition which was able to handle with considerable equanimity a long list of wonders.
Welcome. It's been a long time. It has been a very long time. We're back with a new Administrism episode, and there's a lot of change going on. Hopefully that things are going to be going for the better now. I can throw out the same excuses as before. Life has been topsy-turvy and that kind of thing. But I'm not going to get into that. The only thing I will get into is moving forward. I'm sure many of you loved having Zarina on here, but she's unfortunately not able to dedicate the time that we need for future further episodes and as much as we're going to put out because she's going to school now. So that's one of the big things that changed for us and why we haven't been able to put out an episode. She's going to school, and so it's basically just me and who is now our new co-host on Administrism, who is going to dive in with us into the world of chaos magic-oriented neo-shamanism. And I would like to introduce you to Pythia.
Hello.
Hello, Pythia.
Hi.
So what can you tell us about yourself?
I am a person who dabbles in a lot of things, and I've been dabbling with the magics with you since 2020, on and off through our little Discord adventures. And before that, I was a scientist, a hardcore materialist, and some shit went down. So that's how I ended up on the magic path. I'm currently in Pittsburgh. It's a deranged environment, and I will probably say that several times. And I'm a bit of a nomad, so my heart's in the desert, but my body's in the Appalachian area at this point in time.
Well, and that helps out a lot, actually, because as we've mentioned in past episodes, we kind of, Zarina and I kind of live in an area that's very rural, whereas you saying that you're in Pittsburgh, you kind of have that more urban environment that we had tried to incorporate ideas into, like how to bring some of these ideas into an urban environment. So it's good that we can have someone with that background to try and help out with that.
Yeah, this is definitely a different thing altogether. I will say the spirits go crazy if a place has been urban too long.
Right, yes. And that was one thing that we kind of ran into. Before we moved to where we're at, we lived in the middle of downtown city. So going from there and out into a more rural environment is quite a shock in regards to like dealing with the genius loci, which is what we're trying to focus on here. But I like how having you as a co-host will help with the ideas of bringing in, urban ideas rather than simply rural ones, and like more ideas on like how to incorporate practices where certain things that are feasible for me aren't necessarily for you.
Yeah.
And now that you're with us, I would also like to mention that there are going to be quite a few changes that happen to our episodes moving forward. Having spoken with Pythia before we recorded today, there are some ideas that we want to start working and incorporating. One of them is, like I had just briefly gone over, the idea of incorporating ideas. So as we had kind of laid the foundation or groundwork for in earlier episodes, we want to focus on ethnographies and the words of the people who inhabit the lands that they perform their magic on. And we want a section where, like, after we're done going over the ethnography or the book written by those people, we want to introduce some ideas that we read from that you can pull out for your own practice. So, like, if, say, I'm pretty sure I'd mentioned this before, like the Sami people of northern Finland, their idea of, when they go into their trance state, starting to draw a map of the spirit world on their drum. That's something that you could incorporate in your own practice, and something that from reading ethnography, we could just go and like incorporate. Yeah, this is one thing that you can pull to do your own thing. Another section that we would like to have is a section kind of focused on homesteading or different practices that you can do at home where you become more reliant on yourself, and kind of the spirit of everything around you becoming more ingrained with your environment, and the magic that you can do through these homesteading acts. And then finally, through Pythia's suggestion, is like every episode we have at some point, we talk about a very specific plant and what it can do for you, what like some of the history of it is, like what its magical properties are, what kind of properties it has in general, its physical or chemical properties. Was there any other ideas that you kind of had for this?
I say we just roll with it. That was a good start, and if things get incorporated later, that's cool too.
Hell yes. And so with you joining us now, is there anything that you're wanting to get out of administrism? Or like, what, if there's not something that you want to get out of it, what have you gotten out of it so far?
Surprisingly, this is going to sound stupid, but I miss the structure of grad school where you have to do 50 things and you have to get them all done by pretty much the same time. Without that, I have done absolutely nothing with my life other than my paid hours. So I don't get to do like group projects. I don't get to have friends that we do a collective aim for. So that's kind of what I want to do with that. I want to get back into using my free time for something that's actually worthwhile.
That's good. And you've been practicing administrism for a little while. You were starting with our episodes. You were one of the first people who went through the whole self-initiation. What was that like for you?
That was a very interesting event. The event itself in the real world was stupid. It was, in hindsight, a bad idea, but it was one that needed to happen. The initiation itself, very on par with what I expected. So what I did was I hunted down one of those ayahuasca retreats, and I probably shouldn't have done it the way I did. It was basically, it was an ayahuasca crack house is how I will put that. It's in the middle of fuck nowhere, Kentucky. And in its website, it has beautiful mountains. It was actually next to a Air Force armory, and it was in an old daycare. So it was kind of surreal.
There's just good vibes all around.
Yeah. And the guy who led it, he was trying to pretend to be a shaman and a therapist, but he was doing neither of these things very well. And so we all went through this collective experience together. It was pretty funny because you get to see other people going through basically the same chemical situation, but an entirely different headspace. Right. But I went through hell. I was dragged in and I was forced to face something I didn't even realize was a problem. And this comes from the 1980s where divorce got real popular and it was the first thing you went to for any problem. So I had to deal with my parents' divorce as an adult, which was weird, but that was what ayahuasca told me to deal with so that I could go on to be an initiated administrator. I do not recommend this for many people. If you have any problems with your serotonin reuptakes, if you've had Molly and it didn't go well and it makes you feel like shit, this is not for you. You get help and get people around you that can handle it if you plan to do this kind of thing.
It's good that you're giving warning about the ayahuasca and not so much the doing the ayahuasca in a daycare in Kentucky. That's good.
It's no joke. It can stop your heart if you have the wrong biochemistry.
Yes, I am very well aware of that.
Yeah.
It is something that you should very much pay attention to. And ingesting any chemical, really. And this is one thing, like when we future episodes start talking about like different plants, Like, it's going to be very important that anything, like some of them, yes, you will suggest ingesting them, like common plants. Like one that I commonly ingest here that grows around my property is yarrow. Grows everywhere. But at the same time, like, yes, you can ingest these, but you should know what the chemical makeup of them are. You should know how it reacts to your body. You should know these things about yourself.
Yeah. Don't go screwing around unless you've already screwed around.
Right. Very true. So since becoming an administrator, how has this kind of like given you a trajectory on your path?
Well, it helped me establish who the energy is in the place that I live. It also, it really sets the tone for the next basically 40 years of my life. It's going to be not centered on the society as a whole, but more for where I am and how I can help in the location that I'm located in. Also, there's a lot to be done on the spirit realm. I can see that anytime anyone goes in there, you can see there's a lot of wreckage over there.
Yes. And there's, like you had already mentioned, there's a lot of fuckery that happens when it comes to like urban environments too.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So from there, I think it's a good point to start talking about what kind of book that we had read, before coming into this. And the title of it is How Forests Think, Toward an Anthropology Beyond the Human by Eduardo Kohn. How did you feel about the book?
I thought it was a really interesting thing, a book in and of itself, because it's not like most ethnographies that they throw at you in college. I did take the only one semester of anthropology, and the kind of stuff that they throw at you at that level is going to be more basic. It's going to be stuff like Margaret Mead's anthologies and anthropology writings and stuff. This is way more in depth. We are not describing their material conditions necessarily at this point.
Right.
We are describing the way they move through the world that they live in, which is a very important thing for administrism because they're paying attention to everything in the forest and they're paying attention to it like it's their community, not like it's a phenomenon they have to cope with.
Right. They're very much a part of this, and like the style that it was written kind of did the same. Like, as you had said, like other ethnographies tend to be very formulaic. They have like, okay, these are the people as one chapter. This is their history as another chapter. This is an entire chapter that's just statistical data. This is another chapter that talks about their religious views. This is a chapter that talks about their diet, and so on and so on and so on. Whereas with this, it kind of, just like the way the people lived, kind of reflected the writing in and of itself too, because it seemed to have more of a natural flow to it. It didn't have, like, things weren't chopped up and like scrutinized like you would in a formulaic, traditional ethnography. Rather, everything kind of told a story and it kind of reflected this like organism, this organic kind of flowing to it that was, reflective in the writing as well.
And he circles back on things. He circles back on things so that when he has to introduce a new concept to you, he puts it in the framework of a story he already told you so that you have a new perspective on that same event every time he introduces a new concept.
Right. And that was coming, or he was doing the same, like even towards the very end, where he was like, the time I told you about this jury demon in chapter 3, or the time I told you about this in chapter 2, it reflects this way. Like it was very much building upon itself, and it wasn't kind of like this chopped up thing that you get from all other ethnographies, which, don't get me wrong, is really, really great for reference. It is really great for referencing things, and it has its place, but kind of like what he's trying to do with this book, along with how it's written, is, as the title says, it's like toward an anthropology beyond the human. So instead of focusing on the people, the book focused on the people and how they related to their environment. Like, yes, that is somewhat covered in other ethnographies. Like, these people live in this area, and like they this is their diet and this is how they eat. But with this, it's saying like there's more of a relationship between them, and how that relationship moves into semiotics, or the study of symbolism, or the study of symbols, and how certain things in their environment are representative to them, even so much as to like change their language, where in the first chapter it talks about this one, or like several different words they have that just represent the thing, that's just kind of like it's basically an onomatopoeia for certain things, but there's no conjugation or anything. There's no transformation of these words. It's just like, okay, so I think one of the examples was chuck for like cutting down a tree. So instead of saying like, hey, you go cut down the tree, it'd be just like, you chuck chuck, and they'd understand that. Or like, I chuck chuck the other day. Like, you understood exactly what that meant. So I thought that kind of semiotics was really interesting, how that symbol of performing a thing in the environment reflected how they influenced each other through their language.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the actions that they took into their own hands that were done like that. It was the things that the environment said back to them. So they had a word for the sound of the pig hitting the water. They had a word for the sound of the monkeys running through the trees, and it was all the stuff that is those sounds as they would make them in their language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was just absolutely fascinating to me, since I have studied the anthropology and linguistics. The incorporation of nature into your language as well was just something that kind of blew my mind, and I absolutely adored about that. But yeah, and one thing that really struck me was towards the end of the book, where it was discussing how the relationship to everyone else and their environment, the thing that is like the most striking is the idea that when someone dies, and why death is so striking amongst the living is that when someone dies, like, they perceive it as, okay, death is just a natural part of life. It's something, it's part of, the life process. You grow, you were born, you grow, you die, which is obvious. However, it's part of a community. And so because they're part of a community, like they consider themselves this us. We are this us. We are this people. And it's not until someone dies that they become an other. And in becoming the other, that is where the grieving lies, because they are no longer part of the us. And reflecting on that, it kind of stems back to this idea that I've had for a very long time, that the reason why death is something that we are so fearful of or are uncomfortable with in Western society. Like, this is the minute someone dies, someone comes and picks up the body and takes it away. Like, it's the person dies and they're sterilized. They are picked up and taken away, and you don't have to deal with all of the gritty things, the gritty aspects of death. Like, it's all taken care of by other people. And even then, when the person dies, they are made to look as alive as possible. The entire circumstance of death has just kind of been removed from our society. And I blame it on the Black Death and capitalism. Okay, and the reasoning for that is Black Death. I remember reading this book ages ago where it talked about the Black Death and how that was the first time really in European society that, because there were so many people dying off, death was no longer a community thing. When you died, you had to face your death alone. It was a solitary thing, which is something that in the book How Forests Think, this is not how they deal with death. A death to them is a community event. Someone is dying, they're surrounded by their friends, their loved ones, their family. Whereas in European society, since the Black Death, you approach death as this is this thing that I have to face alone. And it kept doing that because there were several waves of the Black Death up until the 1700s. And then that's where the rise of capitalism comes from the French Revolution. And once the French Revolution came, that's where it kind of like solidified the concept of individuality as a philosophical concept. And no more are you worried about like, okay, I need to take care of myself and my community and those people who rely on me, who extend past my family. No, that was the rise of the mental concept of fuck you, I've got mine.
Yeah, and there's also the fact that we're not allowed to grieve at all. We're not allowed to process dying. Once we stop being productive in the work environment, we are considered basically dead weight until we come back. There's also, I want to say the Civil War played a big part in this, because that's where you get spiritualism pops up, because so many people died and their bodies could not be mourned. Nothing could be done in-house. And the collective grieving in that situation, that's where we get our embalming practices from. That's where we get a lot of our funeral practices also. And it's a way to push back on something that you can't push back on. And we just cannot cope with it, especially in the Western world. There's nothing here for us to guide us through it, to be perfectly honest. We are so repulsed by it that we don't really want to engage with it on the daily life. That's why I used to be a vegan. I didn't want to be a hand of death to other things, but I have come around to the fact that that's going to have to happen for me. But that death always behind you, and the way that we avoid it has just become the norm, and it's just not normal. And that's probably why we have a lot of scared people running around right now.
No, I very much agree with that. And now that you mention it, it is kind of the entire industry of death in the Western world very much still feels like, now that you had mentioned it, like the last hanging on of the Victorian era.
Yeah.
It's because even though there's still, a lot of, things have evolved to everything is a business now, where almost like, what is it, like 70 to 80% of all funeral homes in the United States are owned by one company.
Yes. Yes. I know that company.
Yeah. I applied for a job there once. It's I think it's like SCI Funerary.
They all have that dumb tree as their logo. They all have different names, but it's that dumb tree.
It's good. You can find the fucking bloodsuckers from the fucking tree.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's interesting. Like it hadn't really occurred to me that that's kind of like the last Victorian kind of mentality that we hang on to things. And with the rise of spiritualism, because it was at the same time that you had, with the Victorian era, this obsession with death. But it was an obsession of like, I want to learn it so that I can keep it away. Like everyone was mourning, everyone was wearing black, thanks to, Queen Victoria being in mourning for her entire life.
This Administrum podcast is brought to you by Corporate Funeral Services. At Corporate Funeral Services, we'll handle the death of your loved one with the formulaic precision of a business that's as cold, emotionless, as sterile as the corpse of your loved one. Each of our cookie-cutter facilities will provide your dearly departed with as much taste and dignity as AI-generated porn. In your time of distress, we'll have you in and out with the turn-and-burn efficiency you deserve, probably. And above all, we promise never to throw any bodies into that pit we dug on the adjacent property or to have sex with them more than once. Corporate Funeral Services Company. We're basically a meat market, located at every interstate junction on Highway 40 throughout Oklahoma.
So yeah, it's those. Okay, so those three things now. I've added the fucking Victorian era to my reasons why our perceptions of death is all fucked up. Yeah.
And in the server, I'd said something in passing that I think about a lot. This is going to sound ridiculous and repulsive to a lot of people, but ritualized cannibalism can't be stopped. So if you really want to get back in touch with it, no one can stop you from snorting cremains.
Well, yes, as long as you're doing like endocannibalism, that's fine. Like exocannibalism, that's frowned on. You don't want to do that, but ritual cannibalism, that's fine as long as you stay away from the central nervous system, because no one wants a prion disease.
I think the cremators get that protein down to nothing, but it's still pretty risky. It's still a horrible disease.
Right. You probably should not do rails of a dead relative. Probably not.
Don't you tell me how to deal with my pet rabbit.
Well, no, you probably wouldn't get that because I don't think it's communicable between rodents and humans.
No,
just
it's
like
not.
There you go. So, yeah, you can fucking rail your bunny all you want. No, phrasing. Shit. Anyway, so I think from that aspect, especially like with the death and becoming one with the community, I think it's important. Because, like, yeah, you had already said, like, we have gotten to a point where within our society where you're not allowed to grieve. This is something that's happening at my job right now. There's this one person who's been working for us working in my department for like 8 or 9 years, and she's really good at her job. But she's been struggling to keep up numbers recently because her dad is in hospice. And our supervisor had basically told her, like, you need to be able to get your numbers up, or like you're going to have to either leave, like you're going to have to retire or whatever, or you're going to have to find a new job or move to another department because you can't work here. It's like that. Yeah, it's like, can you just like develop maybe for just a small amount of time a fucking soul? Just a little bit. Like, Jesus.
See, managers are also, they're held liable to their managers, but they don't want to be in the position to do this shit to people.
Right.
Yeah, it's fucking ghoulish.
It is. It absolutely is. And like, I don't know how to approach that other than, as an individual, become more accustomed to death. Try and, because this is one thing that myself, because I had lost a couple people several years ago, and in order for me to kind of cope with it, I performed this anathema thing where for a few years I just worshipped death, and I became very in tune with death, and I talked to death a lot, and I became very comfortable with death, and it was something that like helped change me. Because there was this, due to my culture, aspect of myself that I had been pushing back, like you had said, like it's pushing back against something you can't push against, but you're trying your damnedest to. But this helped me evolve and realize, like, no, this is just something that's going to happen. And I mean, granted, my humor had gotten a lot darker since then, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Like the other day, my mother, I was speaking to her, and she was like, "Yeah, what did we say when, what did they always say? Like, oh, I brought you into this world, I can take you out." And I'm like, "Listen here, Mom. Don't threaten me with a good time. Like, if you're going to do it, do it." Like, it's my humor's gotten a little darker on that aspect, but I realize that death is a thing that happens, and it's just, like, it's nothing you can push against. So I think, like, the only way that you should, like, kind of come to terms with this is just perform an anathema around death, become close to death. Like, I'm not suggesting that everyone start wearing black and listen to The Cure and the Smiths, like, immediately, but maybe, like, go to Goodwill and buy yourself some, like, black t-shirts or something. I don't know. Like, whatever you think is going to help you move forward on your process of accepting that aspect of life, because I'm a non-dualist, but there is life and then there is death. It is a dual aspect, but I don't think life is pervasive as a thing throughout the universe, sort of, whatever. I'm not getting into that now. But yeah, it's something that you kind of have to familiarize yourself with. And like, kind of like, I'm not suggesting the same with you either, Pythia, how like everyone just give up veganism and start just chugging meat.
That was forced on me. That change was do it or die. So there's stories behind that.
But that's fair.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not suggesting everyone like abandon vegetarianism or veganism or whatever, but like realize that even with your diet on an industrial level, like it's leading to the death of many things.
Yeah, I have to cope with that.
Yeah. Like there are animals that live in the fields that get run over by combines. There are rodents that get fucking poisoned who come too close to our food stores. Like there's death. There's going to be death. In order for you to be alive, something must die.
And this isn't to be like degrading or belligerent about it, but respect the plants too, maybe. I mean, that I don't care about the screaming of the carrots. That's such a shitty way to approach this, but the plants, they do die for you. They do deserve a little bit of respect for what they are doing so that you can continue to do what you are doing. That's something that is also missing in veganism. There's a lot of love for the plants, but not actual love for the plants.
Right. And I think that's that kind of ties into like what we're going to be reading for the next episode. You instantly reminded me of this one part. It's about, which we'll get into it the next episode, but very, very briefly, it talks about the Nahua people of central Mexico. And they believe that, corn is the most vital thing to their life. And so before they ever eat corn, before they offer anything, they throw some back into the earth. Like, because they recognize that, they had to harvest this corn, and this corn is taking care of them, and the earth, and vicariously the earth is taking care of them. So in order for us to be fed, they need to feed the earth as well.
Yeah, that is a beautiful ritual, especially around corn. Surprisingly, corn is one of the few plants I can eat and not have a problem with. But the way that it is tied to humans and civilization and just the continuance of our own species, we should be giving reverence to it every chance we get. And I'm surprised we don't, to be honest.
I'm not entirely convinced that we were domesticated by corn.
There's that. There's also that sometimes plants get the better of an animal. And yeah, that's something that needs to be looked at also.
Like, fuck, in the United States, at least, everything has fucking corn syrup in it. So there's that. Like, corn wants to survive, and that's great. Because, my bird feeders, like some of the bird seed that I have in it has cracked corn. And yet still, corn will rise from those cracked germs.
It will.
It is amazingly pervasive. That and all the goddamn millet. There's so much millet.
My porch is covered in it right now.
Yeah, the entire periphery of my house is either goldenrod or millet.
Get some throw some quinoa out there. The birds like that too. And it has a nope, it's too hot where you're growing. I just realized it's way too hot where you're at for quinoa. But there are amaranths that will work, and the birds love that shit.
Yes. And I have a friend who, like, we had interviewed on the old podcast, who, like, amaranth is one of her fucking, like, spirit plants. That is one that she is very, very close to. So much so, in fact, that she gave her daughter the middle name Amaranth. Yeah, that is dedication to a plant.
That's beautiful.
Like, it is. Like, she that was the plant that she, like, gave her daughter to live with. And it's a lovely plant. I fucking love amaranth, but like she has lots of, and we'll probably have her on this show again because she knows more about, apart from you, she knows like the most about plants than anyone else I know.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about, but I'm not going to say just in case I'm wrong and ruin the whole file. And yeah, they come at it from more of a cottage angle, and it's a more, their version of it is way more intimate. Mine's very clinical at this point in time still, but I do really appreciate what they're doing with plants.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like she's definitely someone that I would love to have on here again, especially with because during the last, or on the last show, like how she had given tips about how to commune with plants, which she does all the time. Like I've gone on walks with her and everything, and whenever we go around to walk on her like 99-acre property, she would always stop at certain places and say like, and give greetings to plants. Like there's one that I can recall is an elder bush.
Oh yeah.
And she calls her Mama Elder, and she will go up and she gives her greetings to Mama Elder and thanks her for everything. And she's like, it's the only elder that's growing on this property. So of course, like, yes, I have to give my thanks to her. It's like, yes, like she's very communed with her environment. And like, I think that fits in a lot with what we're trying to do with administrism, is becoming that, like, understanding that genius loci and like bringing that into our own practice, like giving, we had talked about this in a couple episodes before. I think it might have been the first episode or the second one, which there are only 3, but whatever. 4 now. But the idea with from the book on the Navajo, giving names to everything. Everything has a fucking name. Name everything. Give things names. Personalize them. You become closer to them when you realize that they do have a spirit, they do have an energy, they do have a consciousness that you can work with.
Oh yeah, for sure. And also I want to add to that, because we're going to be taking on, from myself, a scientific angle with plants, and from other people, a spiritual angle with plants. I want to let people who are inspired to do this stuff know that just because someone has a good experience with a plant doesn't mean necessarily you will too. It's just like that new friend in a circle. Not everyone's going to get along with the same people at the same time or in the same way.
Right. No, that definitely makes sense. Like there are some plants that I have a large collection of dried herbs and plants, but some of them just don't really jive with me all that much. Like one example is there are a lot of people I know who are very in tune or come across like with a lot of respect or usefulness out of mullein. I don't use mullein ever. Like it just kind of sits on my shelf. I have mullein. It grows around my property. There's a lot of mullein around, but I just don't do anything with mullein. We just see each other in passing, really.
Yeah, it smells like bleach to me. I'm not into it.
Yeah. It's like I can think of one use for it. Like it's been used by certain indigenous people in order to just like poison fish. You could throw mullein into water, which I don't recommend doing. I do not condone doing this on a legal basis, because it is technically illegal to do, even though it's a legal plant, even though whatever, you're not technically legally allowed to poison fish in order to catch them. Unless it's your own property. If it's your own property, you can do that. That's fine. They're your own stockfish. But if you're in like state grounds or whatever, don't throw mullein in the water. But if you're on your own property, fuck it, do it. You can throw mullein in the water and it will like paralyze the nervous system of the fish. And so they'll just rise to the surface and you can gather up all the fish you want.
I'm thinking mugwort, damn it. Sorry. Mullein doesn't smell like bleach.
No. It's fine. Like, I get it, because but Zarina fucking loves cilantro and it tastes like how stink bugs smell to me.
Really?
So, yeah. It's fucking gross. Like, it's not that, like, everyone who says they hate mugwort, or not mugwort, see, now you have me doing shit.
Yep.
Everyone who says that they hate cilantro tastes like it, or says that it tastes like soap or it tastes like metal. No, it doesn't. To me, it tastes like how stink bugs smell.
Interesting.
And it's fucking disgusting.
I don't have the receptor for stink bugs, so I have no idea what they smell like, but I do have the soap receptor for cilantro, but I love it. So I'm thinking about the genetics on that.
So do you love the soap taste?
I can't taste, it doesn't taste like soap to me, but I have the gene that says I would be tasting it as soap.
Okay.
So it doesn't
I
register.
thought, like, because, like, that just made me think, like, yeah, when I wash my dishes, I just don't rinse them.
Yeah.
Because I
just start licking
I just
them.
love that flavor so much.
I wait till everyone goes to bed.
I have myself a fucking dawn cocktail. What? Ugh. God. Ugh. But yeah, so there's plants that you're going to commune with. There are plants that you're going to get in touch with that just work for you. They don't work for everyone. There are some plants that just don't jive with me, and that's fine. Find the ones that do. Because there are fucking lots of them.
Oh yeah, like there are so many plants. In fact, if you're getting started, I honestly do recommend starting with aroids. That's going to be your philodendrons, your monsteras, all the viney things that you can get for like $1 off of a discount rack. They make good wards. And so if you need a space to be protected, you can fill it with golden pothos, and that thing's going to work out for you. And it pretty much works for everyone, that particular group of plants. And that's a good starting point for that exploration.
Good. That's a really good tip. Yeah, a lot of the ones that grow around here, like I've said, like there's yarrow. I use yarrow a lot. It grows like fucking crazy in my driveway. My driveway is just covered in yarrow. But there's a lot of goldenrod. We have some echinacea that's growing, and they're all in the same area. And then there's a rose bush that won't fucking die.
Is it a knockout rose or is it a wild rose?
I don't fucking know. It's an asshole.
It's an asshole. Okay.
Yeah. Like, okay, we cut the thing down and tried pulling it out, but there's too much. We couldn't pull it out, so we just kept trying to kill it, but it keeps growing back. And part of the reason that it's an asshole is I have an open porch, and like I have friends who get drunk and shit, and like this thing will reach out and grab you. Like these thorns will just reach out across the porch and wrap themselves around. It's an asshole.
Okay.
It is a shitty plant.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a shitty plant. It is awful. I also have a lot of walnuts that are growing everywhere thanks to the goddamn squirrels that won't leave my house alone.
You need more cats.
Yeah, that's what Zarina keeps telling me.
Yep, you don't have enough cats yet. You need about 4 more.
Oh God. I really hope she doesn't hear you say that, because we already have 2 right now. And like as much as I love cats, like having outdoor cats, I don't like being responsible for small ecological disasters.
They'll usually go for a mouse before they'll go for a bird, though, just to help with that. I know that they are very damaging, but that's mostly in urban environments where they do that damage.
All right.
Yeah.
So you've convinced me somewhat that we should get a barn cat.
Barn cats are pretty fun. Just make sure they're fixed.
Yes. Well, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Yes. And on that, I think that's a good place to stop for this episode, just bringing things back. So what to expect from the next one? As I had already previously mentioned, we will be reading the book Corn is Our Blood by Dr. Sandstrom. I forget his first name, even though I actually had him as a professor. So
oh boy.
Funny that. Yeah. But he lived with the Nahua people in central Mexico for about a decade. So we're going to be reading through that book and talking about that and going over a lot of what we talked about here with, respect for plants and being part of one's environment. And like I said, we're going to be incorporating ideas, how to bring some of their practice into your own, some tips on homesteading things, which I have an idea for what we can talk about with some homesteading acts. You have any idea of what kind of plant you want to talk about next episode?
Mapacho.
Ooh,
Very
That
easy.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, it
Okay.
should. I sent you some.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's where it sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's familiar. Mapacho is the wild tobacco, but it's a landrace of it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I think that should wrap up this episode. Thanks for joining us on our new revamped administrism. I will give everyone their kind words to Zarina, and she may come back for future episodes depending on whether or not she has the time to do so. But for right now, we're just going to move forward and try and put out as many episodes as we can at a much more reasonable rate than about 1 or 2 a year. Trying to shoot for a little more than that. So, yeah. And thank you for joining us, Pythia, and continuing with us on this journey.
Thank you.
All right. See y'all later.